what we're doing are building agents that are capable of end-to-end research tasks. I think of these as collaborators. Science moves forward, I think, with two things. One, new tools, and then two, it's collaboration.
That was Nick Edwards, CEO and founder of Potato. That's right, Potato, a Seattle-based AI company building an autonomous scientific agent designed to accelerate research through closed-looped, AI-driven experimentation. Potato's mission is to bridge the gap between scientific intent and experimental execution by creating AI collaborators that can reason across scientific literature, generate protocols, integrate with lab robotics, and help researchers move from hypothesis to validation faster than ever before. By combining deep scientific expertise with advanced AI engineering, Potato is helping shape a future where human scientists and AI agents work side by side to dramatically increase research throughput and unlock the next generation of scientific discovery. Welcome to the Biotech Stack, where we explore the cutting-edge technology fueling the future of life sciences in biotech. From next-generation lab automation and AI-driven drug discovery to breakthrough biomanufacturing and research tools, we dive deep into the innovations transforming health, food, energy, and the businesses behind them. I'm Corinne Regan, your host, and in today's episode, I'm joined by Nick Edwards, CEO and founder of Potato. Nick shares his journey from neuroscience research at Brown and the NIH to building tools that empower scientists, shaped by experience spanning biotech, consulting, and AI strategy. We discuss how Potato is developing AI agents that act as scientific collaborators, helping researchers design experiments, analyze data, generate protocols, and integrate directly with lab automation to close the experimental loop. Hear how Nick and his team are working with pharma partners, publishers, and automation leaders to reduce experimental cycle times and push the boundaries of autonomous science. Let's get started. All right, Nick, thank you so much for joining us today. I wanted to go ahead and jump right in and ask if you could share with our audience who you are and a little bit about your background.
Hey, yeah, thanks, Corinne, for having me. So I'm Nick Edwards, CEO, founder of a company called Potato. Um, that's the actual name of the company, and we're building AI agents for closed-loop autonomous science. So my background, I'm a scientist by training. I did neuroscience research at Brown, the NIH for my PhD. Moved to San Diego for a postdoc. I helped start a company in my postdoc where we were building tools for researchers that we were selling to academic labs. And I realized, like, I love the science, but I personally like building the tools to enable the scientists better. It's just exciting to me to be able to help kind of speed up research. And so I took a journey after my postdoc where I spent some time learning about business. So I went to BCG as a consultant, focused on AI, future of AI, semiconductors on a case, which was really interesting to me. But my love has always been in the life sciences. So I came back to San Diego to work at Illumina for a while. Um, and then have been in the biotech industry since then. And the origin for what we're doing now started for me back, when I was a PhD student. I'd been thinking about what would closed loop systems look like for scientific discovery, and early on thinking about this concept of lab in the loop, but it was kind of a crazy idea at the time. This is back in maybe 2014, 2015. And a few years ago, when we started seeing the pace at which AI tools were being generated and the utility that they were starting to provide, I realized, okay, this is really a unique moment in the history of the world, I think, where this convergence of AI and science is really, positioned to unlock maybe the next generation of like scientific productivity, the next scientific revolution. So I was like, okay, I want to be a part of that, and so um, started the company back in mid 2023.
Okay, so fairly new.
Fairly new, yeah, yeah. We're a couple years old, so we're a seed stage company, um, based out of Seattle. Eight folks, scientists, engineers, and mostly engineering. And yeah, it's been exciting. We have, fortunately, we have backing of top Silicon Valley investors, and um, you know, it's exciting times for sure. But growing quickly and just as the pace of things are speeding up, I'm just trying to keep up with all the exciting things that are happening.
You're based in San Diego, the company's based in Seattle. What brings it headquartered in Seattle?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I met my co-founder up there back in like I think around October 2023, and he was interested. So he's an engineer. He's this incredible engineer that's able to just take an idea and build things and like I don't know, build things out of thin air. And so I met him. Out of the Allen Institute for AI, a startup incubator in Seattle. I was an entrepreneur in residence with them. After I jumped off to start this company, I became an entrepreneur in residence, and they introduced me to Ryan, who's my co-founder. And uh, there's a lot of great engineering talent up in the Seattle area. There's a lot of great science happening in the San Diego area, and so it's kind of a the split makes a lot of sense for us. 'Cause we can do a lot of things remotely.
And so I guess that answers my question. I was going to ask a little bit more about the engineering side. It sounds like you have a neuroscience background, but a
Yeah.
lot of this probably requires some engineering skills. And is that kind of how that works?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I think it's, in this world that we're building, like, it's really helpful to have the deep domain expertise and the context of, like, how research is done, and, I think a big misconception that a lot of people come into from tech into sciences that they make is that we can simulate, biology, and that we can, like, adequately do that, and we're just not at that point. We don't have enough data to be able to do simulations. Like the bottleneck is in the wet lab, and so I think it's really important to have the scientific context. And so we have members of our team that are engineers that have that scientific background, but then we have also just hardcore software engineers that are good at building architecture. And then the exciting thing is that like these things we're a small team, we're 8 people right now, mostly engineers, but the speed at which we can build and iterate because we have a team that all of our engineers have 15, 20 years expertise. um, they know what to build, they know how to build the things, and then we can use all these new coding agents, for example, to really accelerate the work. Because so it's an interesting time to be building a company in this space at the intersection of science and AI, because one, it's like trending, and people are realizing there's a massive amount of opportunity here and difference that you can make in the world. And then it's this convergence of like the technologies in this place where we can just catapult and build things really quickly.
Going into some more specifics about potato, what exactly is potato? Um, and of course, why potato? Mm.
Yeah, what's in a name? The name Apple was already taken. That's like typically the first thing I say is, and
That's a good
you think
answer.
it's yeah, it's like it's we're building agents for closed loop autonomous science powered by a potato battery. It was fun and memorable. So, what we're doing are building agents that are capable of end-to-end research tasks. And so I think of these as collaborators, because science moves forward, I think, in with two things principally. That's one, new tools to be able to interrogate things, generate new data, and then two, it's collaboration. And so an example of that is like the invention of the World Wide Web, right? Which came out of CERN, a scientific institute in Europe. And what the internet has done for scientific collaboration is massive. It's allowed an incredible amount of research to be generated and done. And so I think that what the future looks like is actually agents, AI collaborators, human AI interaction, that we're collaborating to drive discovery forward. And these agents are not just like, they're not tools, and they're not they're actually using the tools themselves to do end to end work. And so I think that's the vision that we're going after. The goal is to do full closed loop research, which means that you have to be able to integrate with lab robotics to execute experiments. You need to have real good, real strong world models So the agents need to be able to reason across, verified scientific information databases, and so we've built a multi-agent system. We've released that to some labs that are in alpha testing, and then we're working with larger enterprise customers to deploy some of these systems as well. But that's the gist of what we're building: is agents that can do research, integrate with the wet lab, and be able to close that experimental loop.
Okay, gotcha. So just to clarify, so if I'm using Potato, I'm a scientist in the lab. How would I use it? How would I go forth and say, here's how I start my experiment, here's what Potato can do for me, then I can execute my experiment. Can you walk me in just a fine detail of what that would look like as a scientist?
Yeah. So as a researcher, you go and maybe you're running an experiment on a regular basis, and or sorry, let's say you want to run a new experiment, purify a protein, for example, and so typically, what I'm going to do with that is I'm probably going to do some literature search. I'm going to start talking to people in the lab and figuring out like, hey, where like is there a good protocol for this specific like membrane bound protein, for example, and that can be a weeks long process of collecting documentation, like figuring out the exact right protocol. What are all the reagents that I need? Then it easily extends into months long process if I want to be able to scale that up. I do it on lab instrumentation because then I need to do all the coding. And so what agents allow you to do is collaborate in plain language. And so I can go in and use our first AI scientist that we have deployed is called Tater.
Okay, of course.
It's actually an acronym.
Okay.
Let's see, what does it stand for? It's like technical agent for theoretical and experimental research. Of course,
Okay.
that came first, and Tater came second. Um,
Okay, cool.
but you can go in and give Tater a plain language task. Um, what it will do is it will ask some follow up questions, make sure that it knows exactly what it needs to do. Then it's going to put together a plan for how it will actually execute that research task. Then it will start to use tools to do various components. I'll give you a couple examples of this. You use tools to do various aspects, and then once it's done the work, it puts together a report as an output that I can review and then iterate with it. So an example of when I ran Tater, the first time several months back, I found some old data on a hard drive from my PhD, and I put it in there, and it um, did all the automated data analysis, basically reproduced some of the figures in my a Nature Neuroscience paper that I published back in 2017 in a few minutes that took me several hours, right? So that was pretty cool. Then I gave it some unpublished data, and I was like, okay, well, help me figure out what went wrong with this experiment. And so it did the data analysis, and it showed that there's no statistical effect between the experimental and control groups. Um, but then it found relevant literature where people had done a similar experiment, and it helped me troubleshoot. And it said, okay, well, you could have, this is neuroscience research. You could have injected the virus in a few different locations and across this brain region. And so that's troubleshooting that took me a couple weeks to do in the lab. So those are, I think those are interesting examples from my own personal research. We obviously have users that are doing it for one of the big things is like, um, let's say I want to do like quantification of viral load in a sample, and I want to generate a protocol. So you can go in and say, I want to do qPCR on this specific with using this specific assay. Help me generate a protocol, search across the literature, and write code to run. First of all, write a protocol, and then translate that into code that you could run on an instrument. And so the agent uses tools. It does a literature search. It's going to compare across multiple papers and figure out like what are the parameters that different labs use for similar type of experiments, um, and then it will um, write a protocol that the scientists can go and iterate on, and then translates that into code to run on the Opentrons instrument, which it has, you go and you like pre-configure. Here's the setup of my robot, and here are the pipette tips and plastic well plates that I have access to. So it uses that information to plan the experiment and then to actually write the code so that you can execute it in on lab robotics.
That's really cool. So, two follow-up questions from that is when you say it's reviewing literature,
Uh,
where is this literature just open on the internet? Do you have partnerships where you're able to do things that are somewhat gated?
yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. So, part of it it's all peer-reviewed literature. It's open access content that's online. But we've really focused on partnering with the publishers because there's an incredible amount of valuable content in proprietary literature. And so we have a partnership with Wiley, one of the biggest publishers in the world, to pull in, for example. I think 25,000 methods from the current protocols literature database, and so then the agents can reason across that validated information. The other thing that we do with our customers and users is that they can go in and they build out their own private library. And so if there's like content that's like my own internal lab protocols that I want to upload there, or literature that I've been referencing and using and connecting, pulling information from like a reference manager, um, basically build out their own file and it can reason across that as well. So yeah, it's like the content around this is a really important component of it, and it's an area where we've been building these partnerships and to have kind of a unique position to be able to provide that.
Right. And then the second question is you talked about this code that gets generated from a protocol to run an instrument, the next downstream component of your workflow.
Mhm.
Is this something you have to physically pull out and then upload to an instrument, or are there integration partners that you have where this can be fed directly to, and then you can continue this closed loop series?
Yeah, so we're working on that right now. That's a really good question. We've we've started with a proof of concept with the Opentrons, um,
Okay.
and uh, and so then we run it through their simulator. We can actually do direct, putting it into, because Opentrons is awesome. They for anybody that's listening, like they have open source protocols. And they've been taking this very kind of open approach toward development. And so we've shown that we can integrate directly with their AI system to write. We can write the protocols and then help with the translation into the instrument.
Okay.
We write some of that code ourselves. But what we've been seeing is that this is a consistent need across the entire industry. Like the the challenge of translating from my scientific intent, what's in my
Okay.
brain, to running on lab robotics is it's a massive challenge, and it just takes months of time. And so we're build I can't talk names right now, but we have
Okay.
partnerships that we're building with basically all of the major companies that provide liquid handling services, for example. Also, conversations with multi-instrument systems to be able to integrate across like schedulers, where you're working across multiple lab instruments. So, integration and basically providing this intelligence layer for autonomous labs. That's our sweet spot, and there's a massive opportunity with these partnerships.
Okay, great. Well, I'm excited to hear as these unfold and these partnerships start to come to fruition, which ones come into play. But yeah, I mean, it feels like integration, especially in this autonomous closed loops series, is very important.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, um, integration is a big component of it, and there's also just a lot of upfront things before you even want to write code for an instrument. It's designing experiments,
Right.
and figuring out what are the things that I want to test for, like doing optimization of given assays. Those are all really important components of this that are upstream and that are incredibly time consuming, and that's what we find with a lot of our pharma partnerships that we're building out, as well as like alpha testers. Is there's just um, the experimental cycle times are so long. It can be like months long to plan and run a given experiment, even if
Right.
especially if you're using instrumentation. And then you have to do multiple iterations of it a lot of times to improve things. And so, um, if you can reduce those cycle times drastically, from months down to weeks, maybe days, uh, then the amount of throughput, the amount of experimentation that can be done, like that's where there's this massive, incredible opportunity to speed up research.
Gotcha. Yeah, I never really thought about this part of the discovery process, the research process being the bottleneck of the speed of science. Um, it seems unique that you guys are focusing on the optimization of the actual lab experiment protocols. Is anyone else in this space? Do you know of any competitors that you guys have? Is there any, and if there are, do you guys have something unique that you add to this process?
I think, fortunately, we've been building this for a while. We're pretty far ahead in this space,
Okay.
in terms of both thinking and building. There is a market growing up in this space around AI scientists, which I think is super exciting. There's some really exciting companies that have been announced that are doing more work around literature review and data analysis. And I think that's
Okay.
really important. So, like, tools to help with bioinformatics and basically uh, surveying existing data and literature to come up with hypotheses. Um,
Okay.
that's incredibly valuable. And so, where I see, where a lot of the companies that are building up in this space, that's kind of what they're focused on. Um, and But I've always think, I've always just firmly believed there's this gap between hypothesis and validation, experimental validation. And as even some like OpenAI and Anthropic and the big model companies, they're building tools that can help with data analysis and literature review. And so that gap is just going to, it's going to become exponential. And so
Okay. Right.
then there, I call it a speculation gap, which is like, I've got all these ideas from data analysis, but like, what can I experimentally validate? And so that gap is, I think, is positioned to dramatically increase. Where how do we know what's right, what's real and not? And so I think that's where the tools for experimental execution come in, so that we can commensurately like increase the throughput, so we can have lab validated results and kind of close that. Does that make sense?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it is bigger topics, but yes, it does make sense. So it also sounds like your competitors really are the open AIs, the Anthropics of the world, but you're so niche into this life sciences space that that's what adds your value. That's what adds uniqueness. It's the partnerships that you're going to get that are gated
Yeah,
information. Is that true?
I think that's true. Yeah, that's an important part. So like, um, I like the big model companies are building some incredible tools and agents that can do really interesting things. And but what's going to happen is that the kind of the agents themselves will start to commoditize. I think where this gets really interesting is in the very vertical specific tools that need to be built to enable life sciences research. So it's like the protocol development and optimization components. It's the actual integration with very specific lab robotics that people are already using, or they've purchased. These are capital equipment that they've already purchased that's just being underutilized. Um,
Right.
and so it's integration with those. And it's this very vertical specific approach that I think differentiates us.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that this is the space that you're able to grow in. Um, Speaking of ideal customer, we flirted a little bit with the idea that maybe life sciences is where you're focused. You've
Yeah.
mentioned academic. Could you share with us that ideal customer and market?
Yeah, so where we're really focusing from a commercial perspective right now is on pharma companies and reducing experimental cycle times. So we have a bunch of those uh, you know customer relationships that's a big thing that we're focusing on in 2026 is closing and executing on the deals that we have in the pipeline. And so the typical buyers are folks that are doing high throughput automation. So
Okay.
they, they're heads of labs. They with a focus on lab automation and uh, using what we're finding is that a lot of the companies are actually also building autonomous labs. So it's like those are the primary focus in terms of where we are right now. We have free tools that we've released to. We have, I think, about 2,500, maybe 3,000 labs that use some of our free tools,
Okay.
and we think it's really important just to help the everyday average scientist to do faster literature review, protocol generation, and so that's been an opportunity for us to build community and then to build toward these like more enterprise solutions within pharma.
So jumping into some partnerships that were announced this year, you were at JP Morgan in San Francisco this year,
Mhm.
and I believe it was announced that NVIDIA Healthcare, who had announced some partnerships, you've also made a partnership with. Could you share those details?
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about it. The First of all, I'm going to say I just want to give a shout out to Eli Lilly and Nvidia because this is so cool. They announced a $1 billion partnership to build autonomous labs, and they're kind of leading the way in this space. And so that was announced at the very beginning of JPM. We In the same announcement, they talked about integration with AI scientists, and so we were part of that announcement. Um, and one of the things that we've done with them, early on, was we were building some tools for the agents to be able to use, and some of those
Okay.
were simulation tools for protein folding and protein modeling. And so, or even DNA language models like foundation models. So we've integrated some of those as part of this partnership, like Evo 2 is for our agent to be able to run this. Now this is all in alpha testing with a couple dozen biotech companies, but
Okay.
um, we've been integrating with that, and then there's massive opportunity. Nvidia is has been building a lot of community and focusing on this idea of autonomous labs and closed loop science. And so we had a dinner at the Society for SLAS, Society for Lab Automation and Screening, with them last week. There's opportunity to build a lot more because Nvidia is building the ecosystem around this, and they have a lot of tools that we can integrate to make them available to our agents and therefore our users and customers. So it's super exciting to see them like really doubling down on this space. I mean, it tells you it's a sign of things to come, right? That's, I think, the
Right.
the exciting part.
Speaking a little bit more about the SLAS conference that you mentioned, Potato was there. Could you share your thoughts on the event, maybe some partnerships or programs that you're part of? And then if you could give us some insights on the industry that you were able to take away for maybe the 2026 year.
Yeah, for sure. So SLAS was super exciting. I think we're at I you know I just put out a LinkedIn post about this. I really do feel like we're at a pivotal moment for lab automation and where it's moving toward a more autonomous science. And so I gave a talk about that with Jason Kelly at Ginkgo Bioworks at SLAS. We had an event that we hosted with NVIDIA and Opentrons. We also had some events with Ginkgo and some others in this space. There is a real like urgency to integrate lab robotics with AI,
Okay.
and to build these autonomous systems where and so that's something that I haven't seen previously. I've been going to SLAS for 3 years. I've been on the same panel every year for 3 years,
Okay.
and so I have a sense of where the industry has been and where the industry is going. And yeah, it felt different. Like our booth, we we had a potato booth there in the corner. It was a small booth, and so you wouldn't expect too much traffic. We had like the entire time we had 4 people manning the booth, and we were all in conversation the entire time across 3 days, because there's so much excitement in this space and an interest both from the automation companies themselves, the companies that are building lab robotics, but also the customers. So these are, pharma buyers. These are others that are, again, I mentioned people. These are top-down initiatives that are coming from the CEOs of major pharma companies,
Right.
and I think that the NVIDIA example is, just the biggest, most public one. But there's a lot more that's happening under the scene, or behind the scenes, that I think is just it's a harbinger of things to come.
And so the idea is you're seeing that the feedback we got was AI was always talked about at SLAS, but now it actually feels like it's being used more prevalently in pharma companies in the conversation, not just this thing that exists, but that's actually being executed.
Yep, absolutely. And so, I mean, there's a bunch of compelling demos that people were showing. People were like already releasing products that are exciting around this. And I think, again, OpenTrons is doing some really interesting things in the space. There's High Res Bio had some really interesting integrations for their most recent system. Like Ginkgo, has made some announcements recently where they show that they can optimize reagents,
Okay.
in a fraction of the time using agents, and integrating with their autonomous systems that they've been building for a bunch of years. So yeah, we're starting to see real instances of this being applied in the world for actual discoveries, and it's the beginning of the inflection point.
So then what's next for Potato, maybe this year or, into the future?
Yeah, so I think this year we're really focused on, building these strong commercial partnerships with lab automation companies, um, and then closing deals with pharma companies, and having something that we can sell at mid market as well. And so those are the top priorities for us. We have kind of an initial market wedge where we see a lot of pull, and we've had hundreds of customer conversations. So I think we're at a really interesting inflection point for both the industry and for the company that we're building. And so I'm just excited to actually get some of these closed loop systems, use cases in people's hands, and start to be able to talk about that. So I think those are the types of things that are coming up in 2026 that I'm super excited about.
Love it. Well, we're excited to see where Potato ends up and Tater and what other potato products may pop up along the way. And
There's so many dad jokes. I just I can keep going with this forever.
I'm here for it. Well, thank you for joining us and for sharing all of the great things about Potato. And we look forward to seeing you in 2026.
All right. Thanks, Corinne.
We'd like to thank our guest, Nick Edwards, CEO and founder of Potato, for joining us on the Biotech Stack. For more information on Nick or Potato, please check the links in our show notes below. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.